I have a surprise for you. Enjoy the show.
I grew up in a small town where life was simple, and trust was given easily. My parents taught me that hard work and loyalty would get me far, so I built my life on those principles. When I met Linda in college, everything seemed to fall into place. She was confident, intelligent, and we quickly became a team, creating a family and a life that I believed was everything I wanted. But as the years passed, I began to wonder if there was more to life than the predictable rhythm we had settled into. Our world, which seemed so perfect from the outside, started showing signs of wear. I didn't see them at first, too caught up in the idea of what we had built. But, as I would learn, sometimes the biggest cracks are the ones you don't notice until they shatter everything. Life takes unexpected turns. I'm Jacob Brown, 47, married to Linda for 23 years. We raised Joanna, 20, now dating Mike and discussing marriage. While I'm proud of her maturity, it's hard accepting my little girl is grown. I'm a co-owner of Brown & Jones Accounting, the company I started alongside my college friend Logan Jones. Logan is quite a character. During our university days, he was the life of the party, always the center of attention. Not much has changed. He's still single, still a flirt, and somehow manages to balance his wild lifestyle with running a multi-million-dollar business. Sometimes I wonder how he keeps up. His ability to juggle his personal escapades with work is baffling. But that's Logan, charming, ingenious, and exasperatingly reckless at times. We started this firm from scratch, operating out of a tiny office with little more than a few desks and lofty ambitions. Those were tough but thrilling times. We spent endless hours working, fueled by budget coffee and youthful determination, convinced we could conquer anything. Now, we oversee a company that caters to prestigious clients and generates millions annually. It feels almost unreal. Yet with success comes new complications. Logan and I often backside heads, not over the work itself, which we both excel at, but over his lifestyle. I worry that his behavior could one day jeopardize the reputation we've painstakingly built. I've tried discussing it with him, but he always laughs it off. Don't worry, Jake. Life's too short to care about what others think. Perhaps he's right, but I can't shake the feeling that my responsibilities extend beyond just profits and clients. At home, life has become quieter. With Joanna away at college, Linda and I have more time to ourselves, though Joanna still visits regularly. It's a strange transition, going from being full-time parents to rediscovering our life as a couple. Linda keeps me grounded, especially when work becomes overwhelming. She also reminds me that Joanna is no longer a child, that she needs the freedom to make her own choices, including the decision to marry Mike. It started as a throwaway comment during a meeting with a client, a joke that quickly became something much darker. Alistair is a brilliant but eccentric guy, the kind of person you'd expect to see in a sci-fi movie cracking into a government database. He works on high-security projects for the U.S. military and Secret Service, developing software that can breach systems most people can't even fathom. On this day, Alistair was showing me his latest creation, a program that could hack into a phone, steal its data, and listen in on live calls. It was both amazing and unsettling. I leaned back in my chair, joking, if it's that good, why not hack into my wife's phone? Let's see what Linda's up to. Alistair glanced at me, smirked, and replied, sure, let's do it. I chuckled nervously, but before I could backpedal or clarify I wasn't serious, he was already on it. He asked for Linda's number, and without thinking, I gave it to him. Within minutes, he had tapped into her phone. Here, he said, handing me a pair of headphones. She's on a call right now. I hesitated, suddenly aware this wasn't just a prank. My pulse quickened, but curiosity won out. I put on the headphones, heart racing, and listened in. At first, everything seemed normal. Linda was talking to Logan, my business partner, about our daughter Joanna's wedding plans, mentioning it was set for next month. I felt a brief moment of pride. My daughter was getting married. But then Linda's tone shifted, and the next words hit me like a punch to the gut. Logan, you know she's your daughter. I froze. Had I heard that right? I strained to hear their conversation, and then their laughter sliced through me like a knife. Well, Logan sneered, guess I got the best of both worlds. Got you and got that idiot to pay for the wedding for 20 years. My world tilted. Logan, my partner, my supposed friend, had been sleeping with Linda, and they were mocking me, laughing at my expense. But it only got worse. Once Jacob pays for the wedding, I'll file for divorce, Linda said coldly. And Joanna wants you to give her away since you're her real father. I couldn't breathe. Divorce? She'd been using me all along, stringing me along as her ATM for this twisted fantasy. And Joanna, had she known? The thought made my hands tremble. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was an entire web of lies I'd been blind to for years. My friend Logan, the man I trusted, had destroyed everything. I ripped the headphones off, numb. My mind raced, replaying every moment, every lie, every excuse. It was all so obvious now, but I had been too naive to see it. And Linda? She was a stranger, a woman capable of a betrayal so cold it shattered everything I thought I knew about our life together. Rage, disbelief, humiliation, heartbreak. It was too much to process at once. I couldn't afford to fall apart, not yet. This was too fresh, too raw. I needed action, not tears, and I would make sure they paid for what they'd done. Alistair sat across from me, watching without a word, as if he understood the storm brewing inside me. He didn't ask for details, he just nodded in silent understanding. Maybe he'd been through something similar. Or maybe he just knew when a man needed to act, not talk. "I'll help you," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Tell me what you need and I'll make it happen." I didn't hesitate. I want their phones tapped. Logan's, Linda's, and Joanna's. I want everything. Every call, every text. If they're hiding something, I need to know it all. Alistair didn't flinch. He immediately started planning, already focused on how to get it done. "Give me a little time. I'll set it up, and I'll come to you as soon as I have something." His promise carried weight. This wasn't a casual offer, it was a commitment. Alistair wasn't just helping out of obligation. He understood what I was going through. I clenched my fists, replaying the conversation in my head, every word from Linda and Logan searing into my mind. Their laughter echoed in my ears, each moment of betrayal worse than the last. But it wasn't just about hurt feelings. I needed to uncover everything, find the full extent of their lies, and figure out how to destroy the web they'd woven around me. "Thank you," I said, my voice tight. It wasn't much, but it was all I could manage. Alistair stood and gave me a reassuring pat on the shoulder. "We'll get to the bottom of this," he said quietly. "Just hold on." As soon as Alistair left, I sat alone in the quiet office, my mind in turmoil. I had spent years building my life, my family, my business, my trust in the people around me. Now it was all falling apart. But if they thought I was just going to sit back and let it happen, they were wrong. They had made their moves. Now it was my turn. And I wasn't just going to play. I was going to win. The drive home was a blur. My head was spinning, replaying the conversation I had overheard, rethinking everything I'd been lied to about for years. But I knew I had to keep my cool, especially around Linda. If she even suspected that I knew, it could all fall apart. When I walked through the door, Linda greeted me with a smile that now felt like a mask. She leaned in for a kiss, but I instinctively turned my head. "Sorry, I think I'm coming down with something," I muttered, avoiding her eyes. "Oh," she said, pulling back. Her smile faltered. "You should rest." I nodded and excused myself to my library. It had always been my sanctuary, but tonight, it would become my war room. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and got to work. I started by drafting a few documents, things I should have thought of years ago: separation agreements, prenuptial reviews, and asset lists. I sent them to our company lawyer, marking it urgent. He didn't need the full story, just that I needed these things ready. Next, I focused on Joanna's wedding. The wedding I had always assumed was my responsibility as her father. I pulled up invoices, receipts, and vendor details. There was a lot of money already spent, with more on the way. Then I turned to the harder task. I began tallying up everything I'd invested in Joanna over the past 20 years. Her education, medical bills, vacations, the things I thought I was doing for my daughter. The total was staggering, but it wasn't just the money. It was the time, the love, the moments I'd cherished, all of it now tainted by the truth. And Linda, I gritted my teeth as I calculated what I'd spent on her too, on her comforts, her dreams, all her whims. I'd spared no expense, thinking I was doing right by my wife, but now every penny felt like a slap in the face. When I finished, the numbers in front of me were cold and unfeeling, the sum of a life built on lies. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. The rage was there, simmering, but so was something else. A hollow sadness. This wasn't just about money. It was about everything I had believed in, everything I had built, shattered by the truth. That night, I couldn't bring myself to sleep in the same bed as Linda. The thought of lying next to her, knowing what I now knew, made it impossible. Instead, I stayed in the library, planning my next move. They thought they could play me, but they had no idea what was coming. The game had changed, and I wasn't playing to lose. Sitting across from Alistair, I felt a strange mix of anticipation and dread. This was the moment I would hear the full extent of the betrayal. I wasn't sure if I was ready for it, but then again, no one is ever truly prepared for something like this. Alistair placed a small recorder on the table and gave me a look, part reassurance, part warning. Then he hit play. The first call crackled to life, and my heart sank as Joanna's voice filled the room. "Logan, I've been thinking," she said, her tone bright and cheerful. "I want you to walk me down the aisle. You're my real dad after all. Jacob's just lame." I mean, he's been such an idiot my whole life. I don't even know how he hasn't figured it out. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Hearing her call me lame, an idiot, after everything I had done for her, was a blow to the chest. But the worst part was when she called Logan Dad. The title I had worn with pride for 20 years had been stripped away in an instant. Alistair paused the recording for a moment. I didn't say anything, just nodded for him to continue. The next call was between Linda and Logan. As soon as I heard Linda's voice, soft, sultry, nothing like the way she spoke to me, it made my stomach turn. "You know, I can't stop thinking about last time," she purred. "Are we still on for tomorrow?" "Cess Motel?" Logan chuckled, his voice oozing smugness. "Of course. Can't have Jacob finding out, though. Not that he ever would. The guy's so stupid it's almost too easy. Hell, I keep him around because he's making me a fortune. Let the idiot do all the work while we enjoy the benefits." I clenched my fists so tightly my knuckles turned white. The audacity of it, the disdain in Logan's voice, the way he dismissed me like I was nothing. The call was briefly interrupted as Logan muttered something about needing to sign papers. My ears perked up. Papers? My lawyer's papers. The ones I had sent him just the day before. It was almost too perfect, but there was no humor in it. When the call resumed, Logan continued his rant. He called me boring, predictable, a pawn in his game. And Linda? She laughed. She laughed with him, like it was all some sick joke. The recording ended, leaving the room heavy with silence. Alistair didn't utter a word. What could he possibly say? The betrayal was plain and unflinching, every spoken word a dagger. I sat motionless, staring at the recorder, its weight bearing down on me. My daughter Joanna, whom I'd raised with unwavering love, saw me as a fool. My wife Linda, after 23 years of marriage, not only cheated, but schemed against me with my best friend. And Logan, trusted like a brother, had built his empire off my labor, treating me as disposable. I inhaled deeply, steadying myself against the onslaught of pain. It was raw, unyielding, but beneath the hurt, determination burned. They thought they'd broken me, left me blind and powerless, but they underestimated me. This wasn't defeat, it was the beginning of my counterattack. The following evening, I met Butch at a dimly lit bar on the outskirts of town. The place reeked of secrecy, its old-fashioned charm masking the dark deals sealed in its corners. Butch was already there, a glass of whiskey in hand, seated in a shadowy booth. His sheer size was imposing, his Irish brogue adding weight to every word. Known both as a mobster and one of my more unconventional clients, his reputation preceded him. He glanced up as I slid into the booth. "Jacob," he greeted, voice low and measured. "Not the kind of place I expect to see you. What's eating at you?" I didn't mince words. I detailed everything, the betrayal, the lies, the recordings. He listened silently, his face darkening with every revelation. When I finished, he leaned back, sipping his whiskey slowly. "Logan, Linda, and even your girl Joanna," he murmured, shaking his head. "That's one hell of a knife in the back. You want me to handle it?" Butch's solutions were often final, and I didn't hesitate to decline. No. Killing Logan would be too easy. I want him to lose everything, his reputation, his money, his freedom. I want him to feel every ounce of the betrayal he's dealt. A sly grin tugged at Butch's lips. "Ah, you're after revenge, not justice. Fair enough. What's the plan?" I leaned in, lowering my voice as I outlined my strategy. Logan's arrogance had left him sloppy. relying on me to keep his financials spotless while he indulged in his vices. I knew every hidden skeleton and planned to dig them up. His shady dealings would be exposed, obliterating not just his career, but the multi-million-dollar firm we built together. Linda wouldn't escape unscathed either. The evidence I'd gathered would dismantle any divorce claims, ensuring she didn't see a penny of what she hoped for. As for Joanna, I had something distinct in mind for her. Butch listened intently, his grin growing as I laid out my intentions. "Solid plan, Jacob," he said, leaning forward. "But you'll need more than evidence. You'll need leverage, the kind that doesn't just ruin lives, it incinerates them." "What kind of leverage?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. "The kind that makes people squirm," he replied, his grin turning predatory. "I've got contacts who specialize in digging up dirt that destroys lives. Say the word and I'll have them start digging." I hesitated briefly. This was a line I'd never crossed, but then again, I'd never faced betrayal like this. "Do it," I said at last. "But keep it clean. Nothing can lead back to me." Butch raised his glass in a toast. "To vengeance, Jacob. The slow, satisfying kind." We clinked glasses, and for the first time in days, I felt a spark of control reignite. This wasn't just about retribution. It was about reclaiming everything they'd stolen. The next 2 days flew by in a blur of methodical precision. Each decision, each move was deliberate and exacting. The firm, once my pride, had been little more than a playground for Logan's indulgences while I shouldered the real work. That was about to change. Using Logan's credentials and the power of attorney he'd foolishly granted me, I secured a staggering $85 million loan. The funds passed through an intricate web of accounts, vanishing without a trace into a secure location in Thailand. 5% went to Butch, a small fee for his discretion and connections. Meanwhile, Logan remained oblivious, too preoccupied with Linda in some dingy motel, smug in his illusion of invincibility. Little did he know the ground beneath him was crumbling. The thought of them mocking me, thinking they had outwitted me, only made my resolve stronger. With the financial side of things under control, I turned my focus to the wedding. Joanna had no clue the payments were no longer coming from me. I redirected everything, caterers, florists, venue fees, to the company's credit cards. It was almost poetic. They expected me to pay for the wedding of the daughter I'd raised, only to learn she wasn't even mine. Fine, I thought. I'd pay for it. But it would be on their dime. By the end of the second day, everything was in motion. The company was buried under debt, the wedding fully charged to corporate accounts, and Linda and Logan, too, absorbed in their selfish pursuits, to notice the foundation crumbling beneath them. I poured myself a glass of whiskey that night, sitting alone in the library, letting the weight of my actions sink in. The plan was unfolding perfectly. Every detail had been calculated. When Linda walked in later, I was ready. She staggered in, flushed, likely from too much wine or maybe time spent with Logan. The sight of her, still tainted by betrayal, made my stomach churn, but I stayed calm. There was no room for anger. Not yet. "Hey, Jacob," she slurred, trying to lean in for a kiss, but I avoided her. I forced a smile. "Busy day?" I asked casually. Her laughter grated on my nerves. "You know how it is," she dismissed, brushing past the question. I handed her a folder I'd prepared earlier. "Linda," I began, keeping my tone even, almost warm. "With everything going on, the wedding, the company, I'm feeling stretched too thin. So, I've decided to simplify things." Her eyes narrowed slightly, but the alcohol had dulled her sharpness. "Simplify?" she asked. "Yes," I said, sliding the document across the table. "I'm transferring my share of the company to you. It's only fair, considering how much you've supported me. This way, you'll have full control, and I can step back from the stress." She blinked, clearly surprised. "You're giving me your share?" "I trust you, Linda," I lied smoothly. "You've always been my partner in business and life. This just makes it official." She hesitated for a moment, glancing down at the papers. Then her greed took over. "What's the catch?" "No catch," I replied, my voice steady. "Sign here and it's done. You'll be in charge, and I'll get out of your way. No more work for me, just family." Her face softened at the mention of family, but I saw the hunger in her eyes. She needed this. The allure of control over the company, of holding the reins, was too tempting for her to resist. She picked up the pen, her hand unsteady, and signed without a second thought. "Done," she said, her smile satisfied. I took the folder back, hiding my triumph. Inside, I was boiling. She had no idea what she had just signed. She thought she was getting the keys to the kingdom, but all she'd inherited was a sinking ship, burdened with debt, loans, and embezzled money. She and Logan would have to answer for it all. "Thank you, Linda," I said, keeping my smile in place. "This means a lot." She waved me off, already too drunk to process the gravity of the situation. "Don't mention it. You've earned a break." I nodded, watching her stumble to the bedroom. Once she was out of sight, I exhaled slowly, the weight of the moment settling over me. The company was hers on paper, but it was already doomed. And soon, so would they be. The next morning felt oddly serene, like the calm before a storm. I went through my routine, but inside, I was anything but calm. Today was crucial. Linda and Logan had their usual meeting planned, another cheap motel, another betrayal. This time it was my stage, and they were the unwitting actors. Butch had set everything up perfectly. The room was equipped with hidden cameras, positioned to capture everything in sharp detail. When they arrived, giddy and oblivious, the cameras rolled. Their performance exceeded expectations. Watching the footage later would be a necessary evil, but for now, I just needed to know it existed. When they left, smug and satisfied, they had no clue their escapade had been recorded. The files were safely stored and sent to Butch for safekeeping. Joanna was out with her friends that night, enjoying herself as always. It was then that she met Emiliano, a man whose charm was lethal. Butch had hired him to do one thing: expose the real Joanna, tear down the facade she had so carefully crafted. Emiliano worked his magic swiftly. With a few well-placed compliments and a flash of wealth, he had her hooked. Within moments, she was putty in his hands, eager to follow him wherever he led. He took her to his room, and by the time she got there, she was practically begging for him. The hidden cameras in the room caught every detail, every touch, every gasp, every betrayal. It was all there, undeniable. As I sat in my library later that night, the weight of it all sinking in, I felt a strange satisfaction. Linda and Joanna had both shown their true colors. I had the proof, damning, irrefutable evidence that would destroy them. Anger bubbled inside me, but it was overshadowed by something stronger, the certainty that they would pay for what they'd done. 2 days later, I sat at a worn table in a dimly lit bar, the air thick with the smell of stale beer and cigarette smoke. Butch and Alistair were already there, waiting. I couldn't help but feel that everything was falling into place, yet there was still much left to do. Butch poured me a drink and slid it across the table without a word. The whiskey burned as it went down, a sharp reminder of how far I had come. The house deal was done, the Mexican mobster was in, and I was walking away with $3 million. Butch had managed the sale with ease, and the house, once filled with memories, was now gone, sold to a man whose very presence made me uneasy. The money was already in my hands. Butch had connections that worked in my favor, but it was clear he wasn't satisfied with just handling the deal. He mentioned how the Mexican boss was impressed with how I was handling everything, and even offered to take out Logan, Linda, and Joanna for me. It was tempting to wipe the slate clean without lifting a finger, but something in me resisted. I didn't want it to be over too quickly. I needed them to feel every moment of their betrayal. Alastair remained quiet, but his warning was clear. I was playing a dangerous game. I didn't need the reminder. I was ready for whatever came next. In the end, I knew I would enjoy my revenge more by letting them destroy themselves. It would be the sweetest justice. The wedding was just around the corner, and everything was falling into place exactly as I had planned. The bill had already skyrocketed to $2 million, all charged to company accounts. I reviewed the numbers once more, a smile creeping across my face. It was all coming together perfectly. The wedding was shaping up to be a grand spectacle, a celebration of excess and opulence. I had funded it all, and Linda and Joanna were too consumed with the fantasy of the day to see the trap closing around them. They were busy making final preparations, excited for the big day. I had told them I had a few last-minute details to take care of before joining them. They didn't question me. Why would they? They were too focused on their perfect wedding, oblivious to the storm I was quietly orchestrating. After they left, I could finally begin. The moment the door clicked shut, the movers arrived. They worked quickly and smoothly, as if they'd been preparing for this all along. My belongings were already gone, and now it was Linda and Joanna's turn. Every piece of clothing, every trinket, every photo was packed into boxes, as if they were nothing more than discarded junk. All that remained was an empty shell of the life I once shared with them. I watched the movers carry out box after box, their movements routine and precise. But this wasn't just a move, it was my reckoning, my final move in a game that would change everything. Each box was a step toward my ultimate revenge, a reminder of how far they'd pushed me. Once everything was packed, the boxes were loaded into trucks destined for Logan's house, his house where he and Linda would face the consequences of their betrayal. They would live with the truth every day. I wanted them to look at each other, at the dinner table or in bed, and know their secret had been exposed. I took one last look around. The house was nearly empty now, the silence almost comforting. It was a stark contrast to the chaos of the past few months. Standing there amidst the destruction I'd carefully planned, a calm washed over me. The game was over. I'd won. I didn't need to be there when Linda and Joanna returned to find everything gone. The thought of their panic when they realized they had nothing left was enough. I was already beyond them. The fallout was all that mattered now. I left the house, hearing the last truck rumble down the driveway. I switched off my phone and discarded the SIM card. The wedding was in just a few hours. Linda and Joanna would soon realize the cost of their betrayal, and when they did, I would be waiting. At the wedding venue, Linda and Joanna were buzzing with excitement. Joanna was in the spotlight preparing for the big day, her dress, makeup, and hair all carefully planned. This was her moment. Linda, absorbed in the preparations, only had eyes for one person, Logan. She didn't seem to notice Jacob's absence. He had said he'd arrive later, and that was good enough for her. She was too focused on her plans to care. Logan was here. Joanna was getting married, and soon Linda's dream life with Logan would begin. Meanwhile, Logan was already at the venue, inspecting every detail. He was meticulous, checking the food, the seating, ensuring everything was perfect. But his thoughts kept drifting back to Jacob. It had been over a month since he'd heard from him. Logan tried calling Jacob, but the phone went straight to voicemail. He tried again, frowning. "What the hell's going on?" he muttered. Jacob had always kept in touch, especially when it came to something as big as the wedding. Logan shrugged it off. Maybe he's just being Jacob, distant, aloof, big-time idiot, he thought. He had a wedding to focus on, and soon his attention shifted back to the details. But deep down, something felt off. The silence wasn't like Jacob. Logan had a nagging feeling that something wasn't right, but he dismissed it. After all, what could be so important that Jacob would disappear without a word for a month? It was probably nothing. Linda, busy with last-minute details, didn't notice Logan's brief hesitation. Jacob's absence didn't concern her. She had long since accepted her marriage with him had ended. What mattered now was that Logan was here. Their future was within reach, and Joanna's wedding was going smoothly. As Logan checked the final arrangements, his thoughts of Jacob drifted away. He felt at ease, focused on the task at hand. Little did he know, the calm he felt would soon vanish. The life they had built was on the verge of unraveling, but Jacob's absence was already a part of the plan. Silent but potent, the storm was coming. The wedding was underway, the guests settling into place, the soft hum of music filling the air. Joanna stood at the back of the venue, stunning in her white gown, ready for the moment she had dreamed of. But something was wrong. Her father, Jacob, was nowhere to be found. Linda, preoccupied with wedding details, dialed his number again. Her hands shook as the call went straight to voicemail. Her heart raced. Jacob had never missed anything important, especially when it came to Joanna. He'd been there for every milestone, her birthdays, graduations, even her childhood performances. So why now, on her wedding day, was he missing? Linda tried to shake off the panic, convincing herself he was just running late. Maybe he's stuck in traffic, she muttered to herself. Or maybe he's just in one of his moods. But deep down, she knew something was wrong. Where the hell is Jacob? Joanna's sharp voice cut through Linda's thoughts. Linda turned to face her daughter, who looked confused and increasingly frustrated. Where is he? He's missing my wedding day. What's going on? Joanna's voice was filled with anger now, her disappointment evident. Linda took a deep breath, forcing a calm smile. She couldn't let Joanna see her panic. The guests were starting to notice the absence of the father of the bride, but Linda had no time to deal with it. This was Joanna's moment. the moment she would walk down the aisle to start a new life with Logan. She gripped her daughter's hands tightly, her voice steady. "Forget about Jacob for now. It's not important. Logan will walk you down the aisle." Joanna blinked, clearly confused. "What do you mean, Logan will walk me down?" "I wanted to tell Dad first." Her anger softened to confusion, her mind racing to make sense of this. Linda hesitated, but quickly forged ahead, speaking too quickly, as if trying to convince herself more than Joanna. "It doesn't matter. Logan's here. You're his daughter now, Joanna. He'll give you away." Joanna shot a final, uncertain look toward the empty space where her father should have been, but she said nothing. This day was about her future, and she couldn't let anything ruin it. With a deep breath, she allowed Linda to guide her toward the aisle where Logan stood waiting. But as they walked, Linda couldn't shake the sense that something was terribly off, though she couldn't quite put her finger on it. As Logan and Joanna made their way down the aisle, murmurs spread through the crowd. The guests, many unfamiliar with Jacob, exchanged puzzled glances. "Where's the father of the bride?" someone whispered. "Who's this guy walking her down the aisle?" Mike, standing at the altar, furrowed his brow. He glanced at Logan, but his surprise was short-lived. The excitement of the moment quickly took over. He had been waiting for this day, his wedding day, and nothing was going to distract him now. Linda stood to the side, her smile tight, trying to maintain composure. Despite her efforts to keep the day moving smoothly, an unsettling tension filled the air. Something felt wrong, but she couldn't pinpoint what it was. Logan and Joanna reached the altar, and with practiced ease, Logan placed Joanna's hand in Mike's. The guests fell silent, the ceremony continuing as planned. The elderly minister, his smile gentle, spoke the usual words. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony. If anyone has any objections to this marriage, let them speak now or forever hold their peace." A tense silence filled the room before the large screen above the altar flickered to life. Static buzzed for a moment, then a dark, distorted voice boomed through the church. "I have an objection." The voice, unnervingly deep and distorted, sent a ripple of confusion and unease through the crowd. Logan looked around, trying to locate the source, while Joanna's face twisted into a mix of disbelief and shock. Linda stiffened, her hand tightening at her side. The voice was forceful, almost menacing. "What the hell is this?" Logan muttered under his breath, his mind racing. He'd dealt with plenty of drama, but this was beyond anything he expected. The minister, clearly caught off guard, stammered, "Who's speaking?" "What is this?" The voice only grew colder. "This is the devil speaking," it hissed, each word dripping with malice. "And I have a video for the groom." The screen flickered again, and the guests froze as an unexpected video appeared. The footage was clear. Logan and Linda recorded in a motel room. The content was explicit, graphic, and unmistakably real. Logan's face, smug and confident, was juxtaposed with Linda's actions, humiliating them both in front of their friends and family. The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Guests covered their eyes, some too shocked to look away. Joanna, pale and trembling, struggled to process what was happening. Linda, once the picture of the perfect wife, was now fully exposed. The voice on the screen continued, mocking. "Like mother, like daughter." The footage shifted, revealing Joanna in a lavish hotel room with Emiliano, a Mexican mobster. The camera lingered on their intimate moments, showing a side of Joanna no one had imagined. The room fell completely silent. Joanna, horrified, pressed her hands to her face, her body shaking with shame. "Mom, what is this?" Joanna whispered, her voice quivering with disbelief. Before Linda could respond, a furious voice rang out from the back of the room. "Enough! This is it, Mike!" Mike, standing at the altar, recoiled, his face reddening with rage. His mother stormed forward, heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. "Joanna!" she shouted, her voice filled with venom. In one swift motion, she slapped Joanna hard across the face. The crack of the slap echoed throughout the room. "You're a disgrace. You don't belong in a family like ours. You belong to the streets. This wedding is over." Mike, his mind racing, turned away without a word, disgust clear on his face. His mother followed closely behind, leaving Joanna and Linda standing at the altar, humiliated and abandoned. The room erupted in chaos. People shouted, whispered angrily, and some were too stunned to move. Joanna, her face streaked with tears, and still feeling the sting of her mother's slap, turned to Linda. Why didn't you tell me? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Linda stood frozen, her face flushed with both shame and rage. She had no answers. Everything she'd hidden, every lie, was exposed for all to see. The minister, his face pale and trembling, looked at the crowd, trying to regain composure. I'm sorry, he stammered, but this wedding cannot continue. The guests began to leave, murmuring in disbelief as they filed out of the church. Logan, his face now twisted in confusion and anger, realized the gravity of what had just happened. His reputation was destroyed, his future uncertain, but somewhere far away Jacob was watching, knowing this was just the beginning. The car rolled to a stop, and the silence in the air was thick with unspoken tension. Linda and Joanna sat in the back seat, their faces etched with shock and disbelief. The day that was supposed to be a celebration had devolved into humiliation and chaos. Both women were quietly sobbing, unsure of what to make of everything that had just unfolded. I don't get it, Joanna whispered, her voice shaking. How could he do this to us, to me? Linda couldn't find the words. She was still reeling, trying to process the mess her life had become. The wedding, her carefully planned moment of triumph, had shattered into pieces, leaving her with nothing but confusion and dread. Where's Jacob, Mom? Joanna's voice trembled again. Why isn't he here? Linda's heart skipped. Jacob should have been here, should have been proud, walking his daughter down the aisle, but now he was nowhere to be found. She had tried calling him multiple times, but his phone went straight to voicemail. The worry gnawed at her as the cold air outside pressed against the car windows. Was Jacob really this distant? Or was there something more she hadn't seen coming? Logan, driving them home in silence, glanced back at Linda and Joanna, but said nothing. There was no need for words now. Everything had already been laid bare on that screen, too much for any of them to ignore. Linda's mind was racing. What if Jacob had known? What if he was behind this all along? The idea sent a chill through her. Could he have orchestrated this elaborate revenge while she played the part of the perfect wife? No, that didn't feel right. Jacob wasn't like that. He was weak, passive, but then why had he been so distant lately? What if all this time Jacob had been quietly planning his move, watching her every step, waiting for the perfect moment to expose her? The thought twisted in her stomach. Had he really known about her affair with Logan? Had he known about Joanna's secret? Could Jacob, the man she had manipulated for years, have been playing her all along? A wave of nausea hit Linda as she stared blankly out the window, her mind unable to shake the unsettling thought. Mom, what's going on? Joanna asked, breaking her train of thought. Her voice was faint, fragile from the shock. Where's Dad? Linda didn't answer immediately. The weight of everything felt suffocating. She needed answers, and she needed them now. As Logan parked the car in the driveway, her eyes went wide. Armed guards stood at the gates of their home, their stoic faces unreadable. Something was terribly wrong. What's going on? Linda demanded, panic creeping into her voice as she opened the door. This is my house. The guards didn't answer, silently blocking their path. Linda's pulse quickened. She was about to step forward, ready to confront them, when a man in a dark suit emerged from the house. His calm demeanor only added to the dread that was building in her chest. Linda froze as the man walked toward her, a manila envelope in his hand. Her stomach dropped. This was no ordinary situation. Are you Mrs. Jacob Brown? The man asked, his tone clipped and professional. I am, Linda replied sharply, trying to hide the panic creeping into her voice. What is this? What's going on here? This is our home. Who are you? The man didn't respond to Linda's frantic questions. Instead, he handed her the envelope without a word. Her fingers shook as she took it, her eyes darting back to the guard standing at attention. She tore open the envelope without hesitation, already sensing something was terribly wrong. What is this? She demanded, her voice trembling. Inside, she found a deed for the house, the bold words, property of Mr. Alejandro Lopez, printed across the top. She stared at it in disbelief. This has to be a mistake, she muttered, shaking her head in confusion. This house is ours. We've lived here for years. But when her gaze dropped to the bottom of the page, her blood ran cold. There, in unmistakable handwriting, was Jacob's signature, a transfer of ownership. She blinked, trying to process it, but the reality hit her like a punch to the gut. No, this isn't real, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Jacob would never. The lawyer stood motionless, his expression unchanged. I'm afraid this is all in order. Mr. Lopez is now the rightful owner. As of today, the house is no longer in your name, Mrs. Brown. Linda felt as if her legs had turned to jelly. She staggered backward, clutching the envelope to her chest like it was a death sentence. The lawyer handed her another paper, but this one wasn't legal documentation. It was a letter. A letter she had no desire to read, but knew she had to. With trembling hands, she unfolded the paper, the weight of the words seeming to press down on her chest as she read. The handwriting was unmistakably Jacob's. Linda, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. You and your daughter betrayed me in ways I can't even put into words. Today was the end of all of it. The end of my patience, my love, my trust. I'm done. Don't bother looking for me. Screw you. The letter hit her like a physical blow. Each word felt like a dagger in her heart, and she struggled to breathe as the reality of Jacob's cold, final words sank in. She had underestimated him, dismissed him as weak, but now it was clear. He had planned every move. Where is Jacob? Is he here? What does he want? She asked, her voice breaking. The lawyer's expression didn't change. Mr. Brown is no longer involved in any of this. I'm only here to finalize the transfer, as per his instructions. Linda's legs buckled beneath her, and she collapsed to the ground, overwhelmed by the weight of it all. This wasn't just about losing a house. It was losing everything. The family, the life she thought she had built, and it was all her fault. Joanna stood by, her face pale and stricken, but her voice was sharp with anger. Mom, what the hell happened? What did Dad do? Linda could barely respond. She only clutched the letter tighter, unable to find words as everything she knew came crashing down. The ride to Logan's house was silent. The tension from the events of the day hung heavily in the car. Linda sat motionless in the back seat, staring blankly out the window. Joanna, still reeling, hadn't said a word since they left the house. Even Logan, usually so confident and self-assured, was unnervingly quiet. He kept glancing at his phone, checking for any messages or calls from Jacob, but it remained silent. When they arrived at Logan's house, the air felt even heavier. Logan slammed the car door shut and walked toward the mailbox with an almost mechanical detachment. He needed something, anything, to make sense of the chaos that had unfolded. He pulled out a stack of envelopes, mostly junk mail and bills, but one caught his attention. A plain envelope with no return address, addressed to him. Before he could investigate further, another letter from his company caught his eye. His hands trembled as he opened it, quickly scanning the contents. The letter informed him that Jacob was no longer part of the company. His shares were terminated, his stake transferred to Linda. Logan's gut twisted. Jacob had planned this all along. He had pulled out of everything, not just business, but his entire life. But the letter in the plain envelope demanded his attention. He tore it open, the neat handwriting unmistakably Jacob's. The words were simple, almost mocking. They're your problem now. Have fun. Logan's stomach churned as he read it. For a moment, he stood frozen, staring at the letter. Jacob had handed him everything, the mess, the lies, the debts, and walked away. All of it was now his problem. Logan's mind raced. Jacob hadn't just been trying to ruin him, he had orchestrated everything, leaving Logan to deal with the fallout. Frustrated, Logan tossed the letter aside and paced the room, feeling the weight of Jacob's calculated move. He had been right to underestimate Jacob, but now the tables had turned. Jacob wasn't just trying to destroy him, he had set him up as the one to clean up the wreckage, and Logan had no idea how to fix it. Linda and Joanna walked into the room just as Logan threw the letter across the room in frustration. Linda's eyes were red from crying, and her face was drained, the weight of the day's events evident in her posture. Joanna, on the other hand, was seething with anger, her fists clenched at her sides. "Logan, what the hell is going on?" Joanna demanded, her voice trembling with a mixture of confusion and fury. "What did Jacob do?" Logan turned to face them, his face a tight mask of frustration. He exhaled sharply, trying to steady himself. "Exactly what we should have seen coming. He wrecked everything, took out an $85 million loan, and now we're the ones stuck with it. It's all on us." Linda sank heavily onto the couch, her hands shaking as she processed the magnitude of his words. "This can't be real. What do we do now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Logan stood there, eyes distant, as if trying to calculate what Jacob had planned. "Whatever he had in mind, it'll happen soon. Time's running out, he said, his mind replaying Jacob's final words. Have fun. They echoed in his head, cold and final. The tension in the room was suffocating as Linda and Joanna continued to argue, both emotions raw from the chaos of the day. Logan, feeling utterly powerless, stood near the door, staring at the pile of boxes and belongings hastily dropped off by the movers. It all felt like the pieces of his life were falling apart, and Jacob's betrayal was the catalyst. Then, Logan's phone buzzed, breaking the silence. He glanced at it, expecting more bad news, probably something else Jacob had left behind. But when he picked it up, the voice on the other end chilled him to the bone. "Mister." "Logan, I'm calling about the company credit card," the voice said. "It's been maxed out." Logan frowned, his pulse quickening. "What do you mean, maxed out? The limit was $2 million. How can it be maxed out already?" There was a pause before the voice hesitated. "It was used to pay a wedding company, sir. A large sum was charged for wedding-related expenses." Logan's mind went blank for a moment. Wedding expenses? He racked his brain, but nothing came to mind. Then it clicked. His stomach turned. Joanna's wedding. Jacob used my card to fund the wedding. A wedding that was never going to happen. His hands clenched into fists, fury rising in his chest. Jacob had planned this for weeks, every transaction part of a twisted game. "How much is left on the card?" Logan demanded, barely containing his rage. The voice hesitated again. "There's nothing left, sir. The account is now in the negative." Logan's vision blurred with anger. His whole body felt like it was burning. He ended the call abruptly and opened his banking app, his hands shaking. When the screen loaded, his heart dropped into his stomach. The account was drained. Completely. Jacob had taken everything, his business, his savings, his future. Logan's mind reeled with the enormity of it all. He stood there staring at the empty account, unable to believe what had just happened. Joanna's voice snapped him out of his daze. "Logan, what are we going to do now? What about the wedding?" "What about all of this?" Her voice cracked, but the anger was still there, bubbling just below the surface. Logan felt a wave of rage flood over him. "Do you think I'm not going through hell too?" he spat, his voice shaking with fury. "Everything's gone. The company, the money, it's all gone. And you keep talking about your damn wedding like it matters. Do you even realize what's happening to me?" Before he could stop himself, he stormed toward Joanna and slapped her across the face. The sound of the slap echoed in the room, sharp and brutal. Joanna staggered back, her hand flying to her cheek, shock written all over her face. Linda gasped, horrified. "Logan, what the hell is wrong with you?" Joanna stood frozen, tears welling in her eyes, but Logan didn't care. He was consumed with his own anger, the weight of his own losses. "I've lost everything," he yelled, his voice trembling with frustration. "And you're just standing here complaining about your wedding, like it's the worst thing in the world." "I'm done. This is all your fault, too." Joanna didn't speak. Her tears fell, but it wasn't from the slap. It was from the crushing weight of everything that had just happened. The betrayal, the loss, the utter destruction of their lives. Logan wasn't sure if it was her own heartbreak or the reality of the situation that hurt her more. Linda rushed over to Joanna, pulling her into an embrace. "Stop it, Logan!" she shouted, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and fury. But Logan didn't listen. He couldn't stop the storm of emotions inside him. He stepped back, pacing the room like a caged animal. "What now? How the hell do I fix this?" His voice was raw with desperation. The room felt like it was closing in on him, the walls pressing in as his mind spiraled further into chaos. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think straight. It was all too much. After what seemed like an eternity of silence, Logan stopped pacing. His eyes were cold as he looked at Linda and Joanna, his voice low and flat. "I'm done," he said. "You two can figure it out on your own." "I'm out." Without waiting for a response, he grabbed his jacket, stormed out of the house, and slammed the door behind him. The anger, the devastation, it all hung in the air like a suffocating fog. But Logan didn't care anymore. He was done. Jacob leaned back in his seat, gazing out the window as the plane began its descent. The landscape below seemed to melt away, but in his mind, he replayed the careful, deliberate moves that had brought him here. For years, he'd been a pawn in a game he didn't choose, a player in someone else's story. Now, though, he was the one calling the shots. Tijuana International Airport greeted him like a new chapter in his life, smooth and uneventful. He stepped off the plane with a new identity, a forged passport, and a plan that had taken months to perfect. There was no one to stop him, no one to ask questions. The hard work, the careful manipulation of every detail had paid off. His phone buzzed, but Jacob didn't need to look at it to know the numbers would be waiting for him. $80 million, a sum so large it barely registered anymore. The culmination of years of strategy and a quiet, persistent vendetta against the people who had tried to use him. Linda, Joanna, Logan, the whole mess was behind him. He'd outsmarted them all, and now it was time to enjoy the fruits of his labor. Logan's company was in ruins, suffocating under debt. His personal life? Even worse. Jacob couldn't care less. Those people, those problems had ceased to matter long ago. Everything was falling apart for them, exactly as he'd planned. The strings had been pulled, and the puppet show was over. As the plane touched down, Jacob felt a sense of finality settle in. His past was a story he'd left behind, and his future was in his own hands now. The money was more than enough to secure him for life. No more manipulation, no more deceit, no more being used. Jacob was done being anyone's pawn. As the wheels hit the tarmac, he took a deep breath, savoring the freedom that had eluded him for so long. His old life, his marriage, his daughter, his business, all of it was just distant memories now. The world ahead of him was wide open. With a new identity, a new life, and more money than he knew what to do with, he was ready for whatever came next. I lay there in the quiet of the room, the soft hum of the fans swirling through the air. My new girlfriend nestled beside me, her warmth a sharp contrast to the cool sheets. The phone rang, a sound I had long grown accustomed to, like an echo from another life. But when I saw the name on the screen, Butch, I knew it was time to listen. I sighed, barely interested in whatever new disaster he had to share. Yeah, I answered flatly, not bothering with pleasantries. Hey, Jacob, Butch's gravelly voice rumbled from the other end. Got some news for you. Logan's gone, man. Took himself out, straight up hung himself. The bank came after him, and Linda and Joanna were living with him. It was a disaster. The bank seized his house, kicked the girls out. It's a mess. A bitter chuckle slipped from my lips before I could stop it. Guess he finally realized he wasn't in control. About time. There was a pause. Butch was likely still processing the irony. Yeah, I guess. And as for Linda and Joanna? They're working at some Hooters joint now. Not quite the dream life they were hoping for, huh? I let the thought settle in, the image of them now reduced to this. It was almost poetic. Logan was gone, and Linda was working in a place she'd never imagined herself. Joanna, the once perfect little princess, now a waitress? I couldn't help but laugh again, raw and without remorse. Good. That's exactly what they deserve. Butch didn't respond immediately. Then, with a tone that suggested disbelief, he asked, "You okay with all that?" I leaned back against the pillows, closing my eyes for a moment. Why wouldn't I be? They had their chance. They thought they could play me for a fool. Well, look who's getting played now. I let the silence drag on a little longer, savoring the satisfaction of it all. All right, man, I'll let you go. Just thought you should know, Butch said, breaking the quiet. Thanks, I muttered before hanging up. I tucked the phone away and turned to my girlfriend, still half asleep beside me. Pulling her closer, I felt the weight of everything I'd left behind lift off my chest. The past was gone, a fading memory that no longer held any power over me. I had everything I needed now. I was free. Everything else was just noise, irrelevant. As I settled back into the comfort of the moment, my mind briefly flashed back to my unfinished divorce. But then again, in a way, I didn't exist anymore.